Live.
Hello, everyone. We are here to start OdessaJS Online speeches today. We are really glad that today we will have the first speech with our speaker from Netherlands. And Jenny Maria will make her speech today from 5 till 6 p.m. And tomorrow we will have also 10 speeches from speakers from all over the world. Actually, we will have our speeches on Russian and English. So we will switch in conversation with each speaker. It will be more comfortable. I'm Julia Chernak. I'm OdessaJS co-organizer, and we are really glad to meet you in Odessa earlier, during the last 7 years, and now in online and also in offline part next weekend. Я буду сьогодні також переключатися з української мови на англійську. Рада вітати вас на YouTube-каналі OdessaJS. І сьогодні ми розпочинаємо частину онлайн-доповіді. Сьогодні з першою доповіддю ми зустрічаємо нашу спікерку з Нідерландів. Дженні Марія вже приїжджала до OdessaJS на OdessaJS минулого року, і ми отримали дуже багато коментарів та запрошень знову. Хочеться побажати нам всім провести чудовий вечір сьогодні на доповіді Дженні. І завтра нас чекає 10 доповідей на різні теми від спікерів, які, на жаль, цього року не зможуть доїхати комфортно до Одеси. І тому ми вирішили зробити такий відкритий стрім, трансляцію і поспілкуватися зі спікерами зі всього світу. У нас були спікери з України, Росії, з Нідерландів, з Чехії, з Канади, з Німеччини та Ізраїля. Ми запрошуємо вас задавати питання тут, в YouTube-трансляції в чатику. Наші модератори будуть шукати, вибирати питання, і кожному спікеру після доповіді ми будемо задавати питання. Спасибі нашим партнерам, компанії Логіка, компанії Бітрут, компанії Ліватек. Також цікаві подарунки та сувеніри ми зможемо відправити в будь-яку точку України для тих людей, які, на думку спікера, зададуть найцікавіші питання. Тому не соромтесь, запрошуємо вас задавати питання. Також у нас буде працювати телеграм-чатик, туди можна буде також задавати питання. Ми хотіли б побачитися також віч-навіч наступного тижня, на наступний вікенд, 29 та 30 серпня, в нас пройде на відкритому повітрі, просто біля моря, в Truman Hotball Club, також Seaside Open Air Weekend, так його назвали. І таймінг вже на сайті, там дуже буде зручно з точки зору розподілення. У нас буде main stage з доповідями та discussion stage. Це така зона, сцена, де ми можемо спілкуватися, вести дискусію на техконерах. І ми все будемо робити, звичайно, в рамках правил, постанов Міністерства здравоохорони. Тому ми цього року спробуємо зробити і онлайн-частину, і офлайн-частину, тому запрошуємо вас бути з нами в тому форматі, як вам зручно. Тепер я буду переключатися на також англійську мову. I will switch to English, and I would like to introduce our moderators, our technical guys from the program committee who worked with the org team during the last, I think, 10 months, and we've made a great job for us, and for you, and for speakers, and this program you will see during the speeches. So, Nick Romanenko, Slava Petravny, and our speaker, Jenny Maria. Let's start our stream today.
Okay, hi guys. My name is Nick. I'm an OdessaJS program committee member, and also I'm a technical lead at Hello Crowd, a company from South Africa. I'm excited to hear Jamie Maria's speech today. I think it's very interesting. So, yeah, I'm sure we will have a good time.
Hello, everybody. My name is Slava, and I am a front-end developer at Logika for working this area for 8 years. And on this event, I will be a technical support guy that supports everything related to this stream, and that made technical side of things possible. So you can see it right now.
Great. Jamie, like I've told that you've been to Ukraine last year. Could you please share your insight and your emotions after your trip and after your speeches on OdessaJS last year? It will be very interesting for us.
Yes, so last year I've been to both Kiev and to Odessa, and I really enjoyed it. I have to say that we took one of my colleagues who is a Ukrainian guy, so this makes it a little bit easier to have someone there who speaks the language, but we really had a great time. The event was super cool, we met super nice people. The organization is really nice. We had some great time at the beach. We had some great food. We had some very nice drinks, and we really enjoyed meeting not only Ukrainian people, but people from all over the world there. We met some US people there. We met people from Israel. We met people from all over the world, which was really fun. I really love the organization as well. And I even got a question a few months ago from a girl who's also speaking on your conference. And she asked me that she got an invite from you, or she was in contact with you. And she asked me if it was a women-friendly conference, if I enjoyed it last time. And I really gave her my recommendations to work with you, because it's you made a very great environment for speakers. And it was really lovely.
Oh, so pleasant to hear such words, and we are really glad, to keep this connection with many speakers during the so many years. And we are really happy that you also are within us, within our community, because the OdessaJS have such an insights from speakers who started. For example, Slava was the speaker at the first OdessaJS conference in 2013, and it was nice. And we are developing, and everything grow up, and we like to be all together. So thank you so much. And what about your speech today? It was really exciting and fun and very entertainment and very pleasant last year, as on OdessaJS and on Ukraine, and it's great. Why do you choose such a topic for today? And could you please share a few words about your speech before you will start?
Yes, so today I'm going to talk about software architectures gone wild. Why I'm talking about it is that I'm very passionate about software architectures. I'm mainly about making the right choice for your project. We see a lot of times when people have some trouble with their websites, or mainly we're in the business of e-commerce a lot, that the problem is not the software itself, but it's mainly the architecture, which is not scalable or is not able to do what the developers wants to do. And we think that it's very important to get this right from the start. I think a few years ago, there was really a movement starting when people were talking about headless architectures, and now even going further into fully decoupling architectures. And I think it's become more popular. Software architecture is not just something that is boring anymore. It can be really fun. And I'm going to show today that it can actually be fun, and how to make the right choice, and what kind of architectures we're talking about, and what kind of decisions we should make. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit technical there, but it's more, I try more to explain why and how it should be used, and rather than explaining all the mechanics of it. I really enjoyed my talk last year as well, which was about progressive web apps. It was a very interactive presentation. Today, it's a little bit less interactive, but that's because we're online, so it's a little bit hard to communicate with the audience. But I'm really hoping that you're going to enjoy it, and that all of you are going to ask some questions, and let me know if you would like to get in contact about this subject, and I would love to talk with you about it.
Sounds great, and the first slide picture is also awesome, I think.
Thank you.
Yep. And by the way, we already had 40 people joined here.
Oh, that is nice. Welcome, everyone.
Yeah. Okay, so I would like also to ask a few questions about your interest, your technical background, or just your professional interest, and then I will propose to start.
Okay.
So yeah, what are your interests in professional field now? Maybe there are some areas you would like to be there, or what are your responsibilities, your tasks, your professional life now?
Okay, I'm the co-founder of a company called DEITY, and within this company, I'm responsible for the product strategies. Really, what kind of direction are we going? What is needed in the market, and not so much the detailed features, but more like what is needed and what do we see changing in the market. At this moment, the job and what we do at the company really got super wild in the last few months with the COVID-19 happening. We see many web shops which are really booming at the moment, and that makes what we do very interesting, as the market is changing really fast and we can adapt really fast. We really are a company always looking for really high innovations. We love to try new technologies, so we're always working on the newest technologies out there. At the moment, we're really working with reactJS, with NodeJS mainly. We have obviously GraphQL there. GraphQL, we started this when it just was there for a few months. We started to work with it, and now to see it grow big as it is now, that's really cool to see. The main reason for our company, or actually the main spirit of our company, is really into the architectures and to make it scalable. But I'm gonna talk a little bit more about that later, why we do what we do and why we're so passionate about it. And I really love being part of this company. We are now with 37 people. We have offices in Eindhoven, in Ukraine, in Krakow, in Poland. So it's really cool to work with an international team of experts on something that you're passionate about.
Oh, that's really great. Okay, so I think everyone who wanted to join us, so let's start. Ready, steady, go.
Okay. Thank you very much, and thank you everyone who is joining today on this Friday afternoon. So I'm going to talk about software architectures and gone wild. But first of all, I just made an introduction, but my name is Jamie Maria Schouren. The last name is pretty difficult to pronounce when you're not from the Netherlands, so please just keep it to Jamie Maria, it's fine. I'm the co-founder of DEITY, and today we're going to talk about software architectures. It is going to be wild, and I would say wear some sunglasses because it's going to be very bright as well. If you want to get in contact, on the left bottom, you're going to see my Twitter handler and our company Twitter handler, and both I will be active on. So please follow us there and get in touch if you have any questions. So first, I would like to start with a not so nice image, and that's basically this one. It's 2020. We have an apocalypse coming here. And while we were saving the world before in a very active way, today we're saving the world by staying at home and being on our phones. And this is the way we're saving the world at the moment, because it's better to not go out and just stay at home. And a result of this is that the internet usage is really booming. These are some charts by Cloudflare, and you can see that at some point in March, the internet usage started to skyrocket. The traffic was extremely high, and it's still high at the moment. People are using the internet more and more. This has obviously to do with remote working, but also obviously the Netflix, all this stuff we try to do at home. We try to stay in contact with people while we cannot do that in life. So we do that with the internet. And I'm happy that it's 2020 that we can actually do this. In 1944, this would not be possible. Not only is the internet usage because of remote working and remote teaching really booming, but it's also booming in e-commerce. And if we can put that in numbers, we had in e-commerce total online spending worldwide 82.5 billion in just 1 month. There was a 77% growth with the year before. And it's pretty interesting to see what the COVID-19 did here, is that normally this number of prediction would have been in 6 years. business. And they all were able to do this in only 1 year of growth. So in 1 year of growth, they were able to get the goal that was planned for in 6 years. This means also that there's a very high pressure on this kind of systems. I mean, if you're running an e-commerce shop or you're doing anything online and all of a sudden this huge traffic is gonna hit, I mean, it's like Black Friday all the time. And yeah, that's really gonna make sure that you're gonna get some trouble there. And to survive this kind of craziness, we need some fires, we really need fires. And what I mean with that, that's what we call the FIRES principle. And the FIRES principle, we say a website or a web shop to survive should be really flexible. It should be integratable, it should be reliable, it should be extensible, and it should be scalable. What I mean with that is that if you want to be able to do business today, even if it's an e-commerce shop or just a normal website with such high traffic, with such high demands worldwide, you're going to need to be flexible. You're going to have a system, you're going to need a system that's going to really attend to your needs, and you can build whatever you need and whatever you want, what is good for your business. You're going to need to be integratable because you're going to have to integrate very fast with a lot of data sources, with a lot of tracking, with a lot of other third-party services out there. And obviously, you're going to have to be reliable because your website should not go offline when your traffic is getting high or when your services are really on load there. You should also be extensible because the world is growing really, really fast and there's more and more coming. There's high demands for any kind of new technology, new features, and you should be able to extend your system into those directions. If a time to market is going to take you over a year, I mean, you're not going to make it. In 1 year, we're growing, which is predicted for 6 years. And you cannot have a system that is not easy to extend. So your time to market should be really, really short and it should be really extensible to really keep ahead of competition. And then last, but definitely not least, you need to be scalable. I mean, these high traffic peaks, you need to make sure that you scale, but you also need to make sure that you scale down when the traffic peaks are gone, or else you're going to have a very high cost there. But you really need to be able to scale in a good way. And I think one of the main problems is that the flexibility of most websites is something like this. I mean, we have yoga there, but I think the most websites, flexibility is really more like the vodka there. They're not flexible, they're not scalable, they're not reliable, and they're not extensible. We have seen this example with some really big shops, and there was one actually example in the Netherlands, one shop who had so much traffic, it was a fashion shop in March, that they decided to close down their website. So it was at the end of March, they had so much trouble that they closed down, literally put on black screen their web shop and put a message out there that they would be back online in more than 30 days. So 30 days they needed to get back online because the system was just fully down. And I cannot even imagine how much damage that did to the business. Not only that they were not able to sell online, but also all their SEO positions and all this stuff they lost and everything. Some things they built up carefully for years, it was gone in just a few weeks. So how a site are built and how a site's built, and it's a bit weird to tell this to the most of you, obviously developers, you know about this, but to build a website, you're gonna first have to look at the architecture. So what do I need? I need to make a blueprint for each element and the system as a whole. So what do I need? What do I want? And how should all these services and how should this database and all this data work together? All these elements, how is everything gonna work together and put into one? So when I do that, there are three main architectures. So I'm going to get an architecture, but there basically are three main architectures, which I'm going to talk about today. So we have the monolithic architecture. We have a decoupled architecture, which is also known now as a headless architecture. And we have something that we call a service-oriented architecture. And then obviously there's microservices there as well, which I'm going to talk about during the service-oriented architecture part. If I move to the very first one, the monolithic architecture, this is the old and gold one. So this is the one that's always been there, that is still there. And within a monolith, everything, so every single service and every single thing in your website is tightly coupled. The UI layer, the data layer, the processes, etc. Everything is very deeply interwoven and it's heavily depending. And it could even be influencing other processes. So if you're building a monolithic website, you could really get into trouble, or things can happen that if you click on one button, then all of a sudden the other one is going to turn green as well, because it can get pretty messy if you don't keep it clean. So to keep it clean, and most monolith have something like they call a layered application design. In the layered design, we find different types of components. We find the presentation, business logic, data interference, etc. So so these layers are tightly coupled together, but at least there are some layers. There's some logic in it, and I can actually find where everything is there. In some cases, there's even an application integration layer, and this is where you can, via API or REST, talk to the system or get some information there, etc. So some pros of using a monolith, and there are actually quite a few, because using a monolith is not bad at all. I mean, the application is packaged and deployed as one. I mean, that's quite a big advantage there, because you just have to run one application and just deploy it. As soon as something's happening, you just deploy it as one. It's very simple. It's quite simple to develop. I mean, you just work on one project. It's very simple to deploy. It's simple to test, because you just test the application, and it's very simple to maintain. The only problem for this is that it is only simple when your application is simple. If your application is not simple and it's getting more and more complex, and the monolith is getting really, really messy. And we know this, and we call this many times as the well-known spaghetti codes, right? So when we have the monolith, which is not simple anymore, and it's still there, and there are many features, and you're trying to change something, or you're trying to add new features. I mean, it can be a hell of a job to get it, still keep it up and running, still keep it fast, still keep the performance high, while not getting into a lot of bugs, which you never knew existed before. And one of the big fails that we've seen recently in the monolith is by a company called Magento. It's an e-commerce software. And what they basically did is that they really showed how in a monolith these interwoven functionalities can really interfere with each other. For example, what they had was then when an admin user, so someone which could log in into the backend, would do anything, like, for example, even just logging in or saving a product or changing some text, if they would do anything in the backend, then Magento rebuilds the whole cache, because that's only something that they can do. And at that moment, that it can be such a negative impact on the performance that it can lead to site outage. And imagine happening this. Imagine being on your peak traffic on a Black Friday, or even now during Corona, just being on peak traffic, and someone is logging in, and because of the login, the whole front end goes down. I mean, I think that's quite a big fail there. So some pros of a monolith would be that the application is packaged as one. So that's something that we just discussed before, and I think I went back to the previous slide, so I'm gonna move forward here. So that's something we definitely don't want happening if you have such a big fail. And I think that brings us to the cons of the monolith. So the cons would be that monolith is very hard to extend and hard to maintain. And I mean, as soon as you start extending, this is where it gets hard to maintain, because the product is going to be very, very difficult. Also, when you try to work with different developers, or someone new tries to take over the project, that can be really a pain in the ass. The monoliths are not flexible at all, so you cannot move them, you cannot change them easily. I mean, it's always going to be a lot of trouble to get this up and running, but I mean, it can still work in some cases. And monoliths are not reliable. When you are getting high traffic, the only thing you can do is scale up the whole thing, or else it's going to go down. There's no way you can really build a super reliable monolith without doing some heavy work there. And then, I think the slides are messed up. I'm going to use this button here. So it's still most of the modern internet is a monolith, which I think is very worrying, that even with this high traffic peaks in these times now, that the most of the internet are monoliths. And I also see that most of the big fails are happening with these kind of software systems. So to get beyond that and to really take a next step, we should go wild, and we should go headless. What does it mean? Is that the front end is decoupled from the back end and connects only via API. And the key here is that decoupling the front end, that the front end itself is not depending anymore on any of the back end services. It would look something like this. The business logic and the data interface is separated from the presentation layer. As you can see, that the presentation layer is fully standalone, and we have some backends there. So this backend could be a system like, for example, Magento or WordPress, or something that you build yourself. They bring the data, make them accessible via API, and the front end then can profit from this. The front end, in most cases, is delivered by an application, a JavaScript application, which then renders this output of the API into HTML. So some pros of going headless would be that the front end is not depending anymore on the backend processes. The front end is a really standalone application and can work even if the backend processes give out. What would happen in such case if a backend process, for example, to get images or to get some content gives out and the front end is running, you do gonna see some errors there because the error is gonna show up like, hey, something should be here, but it's not loading. But at least the rest of the website is gonna be there, and you could have a backup message there. You could use something there, and you can restart the backup system and then still have your visitors there. I think this is always better than showing a full black screen. You're going to have some huge performance advantages. Obviously, if you're doing it right. I mean, this is not a magic trick that everything is going right. You still have to really work well, but I trust you as developers are able to do that. So you're going to have some really decent performance advantages, but morely you're going to be scalable and reliable because you can just scale the service that you need. You're going to scale the front end when you have more traffic there. Or you're going to scale the backend when you have, for example, in a web shop, more orders there. That's when you need some more power at the backend. You're flexible and you're integratable much more than you are in a monolithic system. I mean, with the front end being separate, being decoupled, you're able to add things and to change much more than you are with a monolithic system. And that's mainly because developers can work in separate teams. We have, for example, front-end developers now have to wait when they're building monoliths. They have to wait for the backend developer to put everything ready. But in a headless structure, the front-end and backend developer can work simultaneously, and they just make sure that the data is there in the expected way. And this way, developers can really focus on what they're best at, and also means that you can go much, much faster because the front-end developer can start working when the backend developer is still working as well. The only main thing is that you do need the data via GraphQL or API. I mean, there should be data there, or else you cannot get it into your front end. And that brings me to some cons of going headless. The data coming via API can be very, very slow or non-existent. Like if there is no data there, or if it's really slow, you're gonna have some hiccups on your front end there. You need to expose all data via API, and most existing backend systems are not ready for that. They don't have all the data ready via API, so you're going to have to do some custom work there. Starting from scratch can take a very long time. If you are using a backend system which doesn't have any data available via API, you're going to have some trouble. You're going to first have to expose all of that, then add the front end to it, and that's going to take quite a long time. And last thing, but definitely not least, is that you can have some very serious SEO issues when you're using standalone front ends, which in most cases are single page applications. Single page applications built with JavaScript is not the favorite thing of Google bots, and you're really going to have to make sure that the website still can read, but also that you can see what the user is doing. If a single page application is running in the browser of your user and you really want to give them personalized content or track what they're doing there, you're gonna have to find a way and figure something out that you can actually track them. So starting from scratch can take a pretty long time here. Luckily, most major platforms in the e-commerce world, but also beyond that, are actually working on going headless. We have, for example, BigCommerce, Magento, which is Adobe now, and Shopify, which are having a lot of that data exposed via API and are working to extend this more and more. So in that case, you can connect to the API layer and get the data that you need to build your front end there. Now, one of the main questions I get, and which are, I think, also a very decent question, but people talking about going headless, is that they always ask, so what about progressive web apps, right? I mean, progressive web apps and headless, is that the same thing? And it's not really. I mean, a progressive web app basically is a native app and a website combined in one. So a progressive web app is a website which has the functionalities of both responsive websites and native apps. So there's nothing to do with the architecture. So this is purely what we see and what we perceive as users there. And for a progressive web app, we need three things. We need the service workers, we need web app manifest, and we need HTTPS. And the progressive web app in that case can actually live within the monolithic architecture, but also within the headless architecture. So it doesn't really have to do anything with the architecture itself. It's more like, how do I use it and what do I use in my front end there? If we go one step further from the headless architecture, that's something that we call service-oriented architectures. So in that case, we're decoupling the front-end and the back-end services. So SOA, in short, will bring flexibility, extensibility, scalability to both the front-end and the back-end. So how would that look like? That would look like something like this. So we have a presentation layers there. So there can be one, or in this case, multiple front ends. We have a middleware there, which really processes all the data. And then we have business services there, and which all have their own database. So the service-oriented architecture really significantly impacts the relationship between all these systems and these data here. And instead of using one database schema, you can even have every single service have their own database there. And I think that can be really important because some services might need different kind of databases there. This is also something known as a polyglot persistence architecture. That's something I'm not going to dive in too much today, but it's really good to know that you can have your own languages, your own services for every single service that you're running there. And one of the questions we get a lot is, so what about what is the difference between microservices? And I mean, SOA is basically a modular way of breaking up a monolithic application into components. So think about component-based. So everything is one service by itself. So it's not like that it's everything like a very, very small just piece of code. So it's really a business service. In a SOA, you can think, for example, about if you're working in e-commerce, you could have a service about stock services. You can have order management services. You can have a service for search. So this is a quite bigger service there. While in a microservice, everything is really, really separate there. And this search application, for example, is really broke down in even more single services there. I'm not the biggest fan of the microservices, as I think that and especially in the e-commerce world, there's so many great services out there that you can have everything separated by the business and the functionality. And one of the main things that I really love about SOA is that it has a middleware there. And the middleware connects the dots between the system and the services, and it regulates where the data comes from, where it should go, and where the true source of data is. And mainly that one, the true source of data. If you're working in e-commerce, you need to make sure that you always have the true source of the data. You don't want to make a mistake with prices that have changed or stock levels that have changed. I mean, it really has to be the right one, or else you're going to get in trouble at the end. Also, if you're using it for e-commerce, if it's a blog, then it's only output data. We have content which is shown to the user. But when you're doing e-commerce, you're going to have some data which needs to go back to the services. So someone orders something, and that has to be sent back to the order management, has to be sent back to the stock management, which has to be processed and then being back again to the front end. So it's much more complex system, which I think works the best while using a middleware, as many services might share the same data there. If you look at the microservices, it looks something like this. We have every single microservice is sending directly the information to the UI. So I think this could potentially have some trouble with the persistence of the data there. So in a traditional SOA, actually it was much more complex before to build a service-oriented architecture, as you would need a service orchestra and an ETL. So this is where the data, you're going to need that for the middleware. You're going to need to make sure that your data is accessible, meaningful, and is able to use across different systems. So building the service orchestrator and ETL is, can be quite a hard task. Nowadays, actually, we have something great, GraphQL, which actually does a lot of this work for us. So when using a GraphQL with a service-oriented architecture is going to really save you a lot of time and going to make sure that the data is there in a much, much easier way. So some pros of going SOA is that you're going to have some really manageable services. You can really work on each service itself, and you can have a team working on stock service. You can have someone working on order management. And when something goes wrong, you can actually manage them. There's also separate deployments, there's separate languages, database, etc. for each services. You can really use what is best for each service. It's very scalable and very reliable because you can scale every single service if it's a front-end or back-end service by itself. It's very flexible and very integratable. You can integrate any new service and introduce a new service within no time by just connecting it to the middleware part. And it's very extensible without adding any complexity. When built right, and you have a very decent middleware, then you can extend easily any other service. For example, you never had a search service or you want to have a new search service, you can just add it, connect it to the middleware, and the middleware makes sure that the data is going to the right places. You don't really have to rebuild the whole system and figure out where the data should go, as you can do this with your middleware. Fast adoption of new features and technologies. When you need something new, or there's new features, or there's new technologies, you want to switch the technology out, you don't have to rebuild your whole system. You can just work it by a service, either backend or front-end services. And you can work with distributed teams. You can have teams working on backend features. You can have specialists working on front ends. You can have specialists on your middleware, etc. And it's going to increase productivity very much, as you are with a big team with more people who can work simultaneously on different problems and deploy it by themselves, test it by themselves, and you can have very fast iterations. And with that, really shorten your time to market. Additionally, and I think this is mainly not only in the e-commerce space, but big part of the e-commerce space, and that you can use existing services. And for example, there's some really cool search applications out there. For example, Agolia or Elasticsearch. You don't have to build this yourselves as a microservice. You can actually use these services, use their API, use their GraphQL, or whatever they have ready for you, connect it to your middleware and get it up and running. This is a really, really cool way, and we see more and more backend systems running into this space. This can also be done, for example, with payments or product management or content management, whatever you're going to need there. So basically speaking, a SOA has the FIRES. It is flexible, it is integratable, it is reliable, it is extensible, and it's scalable. I mean, it sounds really good, but it's obviously not a magic trick either. I mean, there are some cons of SOA. And that is one of them, is that it's very complex to build from scratch. If you're really going to have to build from scratch, you're going to run into a lot of problems. You're going to have to build a middleware. You're going to have to figure out how the systems works, etc. You're going to need an architect for the blueprint. If you are just with a team of 2 people and you're just making a small web shop or a small content website, I mean, this is not something probably that would be on your short list to do. And you're going to have more initial setup work, because the first run is going to be much more highly intensive. But after that, you're going to be very highly future-proof, because after that, you're going to have the FIRES there. You're going to be flexible. You're going to be reliable. You can extend. And for the future, this system really is the way to go there. If we wouldn't build everything from scratch, right, that would be a very cool thing. And that's something that we thought about. We thought about, what if we offer a light version of a SOA? We're going to need a middleware. So we're going to have some kind of middleware which is generic, which can be used in many, many cases. And to make it generic, we're going to have something that we call a data integrator. We're going to need a tool or some software that's going to translate and extract and divide the data where it should go and how we should get it. For example, when you have a lot of data coming in from merchants or coming in from distributors, I mean, it's going to look really bad. So you're going to have a way to get all the data in the right way and to have the output in the right way. So we're going to need a data integrator, which is generic as well, to connect with the middleware. And we're going to need some basic services, obviously, because you're going to need the front end, and we should offer some basic e-commerce services. And obviously, we should integrate with the main platforms out there. So that's something that we did. So at our company, this is what we built, basically. So these are our products that we built. In the middle, we have a middleware there. So we have a presentation server, which makes sure that the data is going in the right way to the front end, which in this case is a progressive web app there. There's a service integrator there, which integrates with all the third-party services, but also integrates with some services we build ourselves in the Headless Merchant Center. So it could be payment applications, order applications, stock applications, etc. If you use this kind of system, you don't even have to use every single thing there. You could use, for example, BigCommerce and WordPress, because you like the BigCommerce for the commerce options and WordPress for the content. Connect it with the middleware and use our front-end PWA team, and then build your own. In that case, you're going to have a light version of the SOA, which brings you really, really into a future-proof setup, which later you can extend if you at some point going to need stock services, or if at some point you want to introduce SAP. It's going to be much, much easier. An example that we did is some schedule here. So we used WordPress for content. We use Elasticsearch for products. We use we use Elasticsearch for navigation. We used Google for products. These were all product feeds coming from a lot of web shops. And we used NodeJS for some social login and some custom features. We all stitched them together on the middleware and brought them in as extensions. And then with dynamic routing and some caching, we made a front end there. And what it eventually was, it was a very big web shop with over 7 million products in there, and which basically has every single thing in there. So I'm looking here for Lego Green, it's in Dutch. And when I click on one, as you can see, it shows you which web shops it's there, what is the delivery time, what is the cost to deliver, and what is going to be the price. So it's like a huge search engine of all products out there. And here I'm looking for a dress in red. And when I'm going even further, the dress in red with the white dots. And as you can see, it's very accurate and very fast. And even the small micro animation that you see that the screen is turning white when I'm typing is something we did deliberately, as the system was so fast that people didn't even see that products were appearing there. So we had to build in some animation for that. So when building the system, there were some really cool results that we saw. We were able to put in over 7 million products in there. And we even tested with 19 million products. We had a 0.063 seconds loading time. And then the best thing was that we were able to build the whole thing within just 3 months. So there was a 3 months time to market that to build a website with 7 million products in there, a very fast search engine, and data coming from all different kind of sources. And you can even imagine how many web shops this was. I think it was over 200 or 300 websites, web shops, putting in the data, bringing it to us with all different kind of data. Some were delivering it in centimeters, others were delivering it in inches, some were delivering it in XML, others were doing it in JSON files. So it was pretty interesting to all stitch them together. So back to the basics. We basically have 3 main architectures. So we have the monolith, decoupled, service-oriented, and that's obviously is also the microservice. And then people ask me the question, so which one is the best? And to be honest, I cannot really give you an answer for that. There is not one which is best. You're really gonna have to figure out what is your project and what do you need. If you have a simple blog with just some content, maybe some videos there, you're gonna be fine with a monolithic architecture. And it's not just what you wanna build, but also your team. I mean, if you're just there with 2 or 3 people or just you by yourself, I mean, I wouldn't even, that doesn't really make sense to go very big if you just want to show your friends how you're doing or your interest into cooking or something like that. When you're running web shops, maybe into B2C, so maybe into B2B, when you're getting a little bit more complex, I would really recommend to look if headless architecture is a possibility for you. Also, because there's many backend systems at the moment which are offering very decent products out there, very decent backends, which you can use then to use with your own presentation layer there. And this gives you the advantage of being scalable and gives you the advantage of being flexible. And if you're really running into multi-X web shops or multi-X services, so for example, you have different stock locations, you have different websites, different front ends, you're going to have different services there, different order systems, etc., then really look into service-oriented architecture. If you're not doing that with this kind of web shops, you're going to run into troubles really fast. And I think that is a shame, because then the setup time, and especially when you're using, for example, a service like ours or other services out there, then the setup time is not that bad anymore, and you can actually make sure that you're future-proof. To decide what your business needs, I think is one of the hardest tasks. And this is also one that you should spend a lot of time on. You should really take your time to do this, to really figure out what you need, and don't start building from scratch. You really need to figure out what is going on, what do I need, but not only what do I need now, because what you're going to need today is not what you're going to need tomorrow. Focus on what you're going to need tomorrow, focus on what you're going to need in 1 year, and look what is out there, because there's some really great softwares out there which can really help you further. And in that case, you're not going to create a huge debt for yourself within the next few months. So I would like to thank you, everyone, for my presentation. I wrote a blog about this topic as well, and you can find it in the link, and you can find it with the QR code, and you can read some more in depth about this product. You can always contact me on Twitter, on LinkedIn, or wherever, and I'm happy to help you and to talk with you about this subject some more. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie Maria, for the awesome presentation. And I have a question for you. Of course, I see all the advantages of decoupled architecture or service-oriented architecture, but what to do if you are stuck with a monolith architecture and want to switch to a more flexible one?
Yeah, that's something that we see at the moment that's happening a lot. People have a monolithic architecture. It's working, some parts are working and some parts which are struggling. And I never believe to really rebuild your whole system. I mean, refactoring the whole thing just doesn't make sense. It's going to take you a long time. It's also not necessary because in many cases, a monolithic architecture does have some really decent services which are actually working for you. I mean, maybe you're going to need some more power on the side for stock management or something like that. So you don't need it on the content. I mean, you're not going to break down the whole system just because you're going to need one service there. In that case, I would advise to slightly move into a more decoupled architecture by or basically a service-oriented architecture by using a middleware, connecting your existing systems to the middleware, and by piece replacing the parts that you're going to need. In that case, you can move forward in just a few months. You can add your flexibility there, and then in the next years or in the next time that you're going to need, replace service by service whenever you need it. But don't throw away your whole monolith. Don't take all the risk of breaking it down and starting all over again.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any more question?
Yeah, I'll check our YouTube chat. Maybe somebody asked there something. No. Okay, another question from me. When would you choose microservice architecture?
Yeah, so that's something I didn't discuss fully here, as I'm more focused on the monolithic service-oriented and the more decoupled architectures. We see that the microservices are more used for very, very complex applications, which are not maybe only web-based. So, for example, there are some medical applications, some applications which are running on direct service, which might use this. I don't see much advantages in using microservices for generic services, like, for example, web shops, because there's so many great services out there. As I mentioned, the search or the payments, I mean, it doesn't really make sense to move them fully into a microservice and to rebuild everything by yourself. So a microservice could be used by very, very big enterprises. We see Zalando and these kind of companies which are using this more and more. But I don't see that much advantage if you're going into the web shop sphere to really get into these microservice architectures. Unless you have ambitions to become the next Jeff Bezos and you have a big budget to spend, then maybe it's something you could do.
Okay, thank you very much for your answers. I don't know if we have any more questions. Slava, do you have any questions?
Actually, this presentation was very, very straightforward and pretty detailed. So no questions left in my head after listening to all of that.
Oh, that is great to hear.
Yeah.
I hope that the listeners on YouTube also got some insights into the basics of architectures. I know it's a very, very complex subject. I know we can talk about this for hours and hours, and we can go in deeper and have great discussions. But I hope that I could bring you some basics here and give you a little bit more understanding of what is going on here and what we do with our company and why we are so passionate about it.
Yeah, in Russian we have a wording that everything has been put into shelves, and that can be said about like your presentation today. Everything is very structured and everything is very, very clear.
Thank you very much.
It was great. Okay, so thank you. I will give word to Julia. Looks like Julia is not here. So Nick, can you please say something, and I will go through our next steps and we'll get the announcement of our next activity.
Yeah, I want to thank again Jamie Maria for an awesome presentation. I had some great insights, and also people at our chat on YouTube also say that the presentation was great. So thank
that
you.
is nice.
Yeah. And I invite all our viewers to attend our workshop that will start in 10 minutes. It will be about state management and React and a factor library in particular. And also I invite all our viewers to our online day tomorrow. We have 10 interesting speeches.
Tomorrow we will have a huge online event. We will have 10 speeches and also a panel discussion where all the speakers will join together and discuss some hot topics. The particular topic is still a secret. It will be a surprise for you. So this event will start tomorrow at 10 a.m. Ukrainian time, UTC+3. It will be right here on the same OdessaJS YouTube channel. So please join. There will be a ton of, a big amount of interesting speeches. So you will find anything by your choice and taste. There will be half of the speeches will be in English and half in Russian. So you also have some options on that. And another activity that will be happening tomorrow is our online quest with support of Lighthouse. So if you will join by 14, I believe, 2 p.m., the event will start, and that will be a quest based on Silicon Valley TV show. And that quest is specifically tuned for developers, for JavaScript and front-end developers. So we spend a lot of time figuring this out and making the best event with the help of Lighthouse team. I hope that you will enjoy this activity and you will have some fun while still staying at home, a safe place, with your couch, with your table, and with your bowl of soup. Okay, thank you, everybody. See you tomorrow, same channel, same time. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Enjoy tomorrow. Bye-bye.